Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. And we are going to continue with our reading of the book Mounting Sleipnir. So, update, I had briefly mentioned my bank tried to lose my money. I won't get into what happened. I just have to say, if you ever go out of the country, make sure that your bank knows where you are and that you have a forwarding address somewhere. And if you get a strange email that looks like phishing, no matter what the 24-hour bank number tells you, you should call that number. That's what I didn't do. I got a suspicious looking email. Not quite sure what it was, saying you need to call us or we're going to block your account. And I called the 24-hour number at the bank and I said, I got this suspicious email. And they said, oh yeah, that looks suspicious. I don't know what that phone number is. Forward that to our fraud department and you'll be fine. Well, I wasn't fine. They closed 2 of my 3 accounts. Had I not just simply gone out of curiosity to look at what my bank balance was, I wouldn't have known. And then had I not then called them, they would have canceled my 3rd remaining account and I would have been completely broke in a foreign country. And so apparently they're going to put my money back in, the $5,000 that was in limbo. And so I should be okay. So that's why my eyes are all baggy. I've been just like up for 2 days going, what the hell's going on with my money? All right, so let us continue. Astrologically speaking, there's some weird stuff going on there. Mars is in what's called the Gandanta point, where it's bouncing back and forth going between a water and a fire sign in Pisces and Aries. And my Mars is hovering over my 8th house, which is like the house of like chaos and radical ups and downs. And so I've been having a lot of crazy stuff going on lately. And so just out of convenience, I'm going to blame it on astrology. All right, let us go ahead and read. So I've been reading from the book last time in the 7th installment of this. I read from a quote from the myth Odin's Korpsgaldur, which means Odin's corpse song. And the quote goes like this. All father acts, elves discern, Vanir know, Norns point the way, woodwives give birth, humans endure, Thyrses wait, Valkyries yearn. So we have gone through, last time we went through all of the categories that were in this quote, All Father, which is Odin, elves, Vanir, Norns, woodwives or spirit wights, and now we're at humans. So let me scroll down to that, which is on page 127 of my PDF version of my book. Yours might be different depending on what format you're reading, in case you're reading along with me. And as always, I'm going to give my editorial comments as I see fit, and if I have any thoughts that have changed since I wrote this, I will share that with you as well. Again, if you're not clear on spellings or things like that, get the book. All you have to do is go up here, just go into Amazon and type in Mounting Sleipnir. I'm sure I'm the only one with that title. Or go up to courses.thunderwizard.com and get it yourself. I'm happy to read it. I enjoy it. And but make use of the tools. I put a lot of effort into making available. And things like books and stuff are really inexpensive, and I recommend getting. All right, let us continue. So now we're on the chapter Humans. And the quote, men endure. As previously stated, the word man, spelled M-A-N-N, originally referred to human beings of both sexes. So this phrase can best be translated as human beings endure. Why endure? What What is it that we are enduring? I believe this refers to us enduring the process of spiritual evolution. Being that the reader is most likely human, I do not feel it necessary to elaborate on the experience of enduring our physical lives. You don't need me to explain that to you. You live it every day. So I don't know why I didn't go into more depth here, but I'm thinking back to when I was a young adult. Now, my life was challenging. So, if you think that me promoting my philosophy of, there's no such thing as a victim and we volunteer and we create everything in our lives, it doesn't mean that life was easy for me. If you think, oh, he's got it easy, he's a whatever it is, and fill in the blank, he doesn't know what I'm going through. Well, I may not know what you're going through, but there's a pretty good chance that you probably don't know what I went through. And I'm not trying to compete with anybody, but I wouldn't wish a lot of the shit that happened to me on other people. So I remember when I was in my 20s, and I think I was coming out of Christianity or something, and I remember just feeling like, all I do is persist. The word persist is like, I just keep going, and it's no matter how it was a difficult existence, and I was very stoic about it, and I was very nihilistic about it. By the way, the word is not nihilism, it's nihilism. The Latin word is nihil, which means nothing. And so I was very nihilistic about life. And I just felt like I was just persisting. But, now I don't feel that way now. And the better way is what the myth here says, which is we endure. So whatever you're going through, if you can hang on to this philosophy, that everything is our creation and there are no victims, then in my experience, you can move from persisting to actually enduring, and then from enduring, you can move to, overcoming, sorry, I'm really tired. You can go to a state of overcoming, conquering your life. All right, so let's continue. So the next one is thyrses. Thyrses weight. So again, the entire quote is. What is the entire quote? Okay, I went past it. Nope, I did not go past it. The entire quote is: all father acts, elves discern, Vanir know, Norns point the way, woodwives give birth, humans endure, thyrses wait. So, let's see what pithy, deep knowledge I had to say, because I don't remember what I wrote in this upcoming chapter about thyrses wait. In Teutonic mythology, there are two types of giants, the Ettins and the thyrses. Ettins or Jotuns are primordial forces of nature such as gravity, old age, inertia, time, etc. The thyrses represent the forces of ignorance, violence, and destruction. They are lethargic in nature. They have no awareness of others. They are not able to emotionally identify with others. In other words, they have no empathy. Any giant that acts as an obstacle to human evolution can be classified as a thyrse. These thyrses wait because they are lethargic in nature, and also because they are predatory beings. They lie in wait to pounce on their prey. Oftentimes, that prey is the human consciousness. Thunor spends a large portion of his time fighting thyrses and protecting Midgard from them. Thunor is half giant since he himself is a primordial force of nature. He is the force of electromagnetism. But Thunor is also the initiator of human mental evolution. Thunor's fight for mental evolution is represented in his antagonism against the giant world serpent Jormungandr. As it happens, the Vedics had a version of the world serpent whom they called Vritra. Vedic mythology recounts the victory of Indra over the serpent Vritra, who withholds the life-giving waters of heaven. By the way, while I'm on the subject, go and watch my videos or my playlist. What is it? I forget what it is now. Heck, I'm so tired I forgot. Anyway, those of you who know, maybe you can type it in there, the one where I talk about this. Anyway, as it happens, what does this struggle against the world serpent signify? Well, it probably has many meanings, but one meaning is the struggle of humans to overcome and evolve beyond their thirst-like reptilian brain. Indra decapitates Vritra. When Indra defeats Vritra and decapitates him, it is said that the waters of life flow over Vritra's head. Indra is known as a deity of mental evolution. His defeat of Vritra is a victory for evolved human awareness. This process is ongoing, so the fight of Thunor against Jormungandr is also ongoing. When we look at the human spinal column as it rises into the brain cavity, it terminates in the center of our brainstem that has been called the reptilian brain. And here in the book, although you can't see it, I have next to each other the side view of just the human spinal column as it goes up into the brain, right next to a picture of a cobra as it's standing up. And they look almost identical. The similarity between the two is quite striking. So you see just by looking at it that the reptilian brainstem has to do with the spinal column going up to the lower portion of the brain. And then I have a picture of the triune brain, and there's on the top of the brain is the human, and then in the center is the old mammalian, and then the root of it, which connects directly to the spinal cord, is the reptilian. All right, I'll continue with the text now. The waters that flow over Vritra's decapitated head are the waters of mental evolution as seen in the upper portions of the human brain that flow over the reptilian brain. Take a look at the above pictures. Notice how the human brain flows over the brainstem. So it does. There's like the brainstem, here's the spinal column and the brainstem, and then there's like this, the actual, the upper centers, the emotional, and then the objective thinking is flowing over the top of the reptilian part of the brain. The myth of the decapitation of Vritra is about the human evolution beyond mere animal instinct. It is Indra that gives this gift to humans. By defeating the Thyrses, Thunor provides us with ammunition to evolve beyond our basic instincts. We don't lose those instincts, but we gain mastery over them. And if you don't remember from previous chapters, I've already made the connection that Indra and Thunor are two ways of talking about the same being. So the myth of Indra decapitating Vritra you can also apply to Thunor. The serpent is both revered and reviled. In our bodies, the serpent is our spinal column that carries the evolutionary fire of the rune Ing to the upper centers of our brain. That spiritual fire is also known as Kundalini. That serpent is symbolic of forbidden esoteric knowledge, but esoteric knowledge can also kill if not handled properly. In Teutonic myth, Thunor attempts to kill Jormungandr but is not successful. The planet Earth needs Jormungandr to surround her, otherwise she would be destroyed. Without the instincts of our reptilian brain, we would also not survive. I wanted to comment earlier, I said, that the serpent is symbolic of forbidden esoteric knowledge, but esoteric knowledge can also kill if not handled properly. And Shiva is called the Lord of the Nagas, the Lord of the serpents. And when the gods in Vedic mythology, the gods and the demigods, what we would call the Aesir and the Vanir, what they call the Devis and the Asuras. In the beginning of the creation of the universe, they were using the spinal column, which was the serpent Vasuki, and they were using Vasuki as like a stir, and they were stirring the ocean of milk, which is all, everything, so that the soma, or the ambrosial nectar of life, would rise to the top. But what also rose to the top was poison, because they were the serpent. So the serpent was doing it, so the idea is that the poison was coming from the serpent. And in order to get to the soma, Shiva had to drink the poison. And so he holds the poison in his throat, which is, well, of course, the throat center, the speaking the truth. But it's also, he processes and purifies the poison so that, it can be, you can deal with it, you can consume it. So I'm thinking about that as well, that the spinal column, brings, it is the movement of the Kundalini, which, as we talked about before, is the human personality, the human awareness. It's not spiritual awareness like the soul. It's human awareness seeking spirituality, and that creates esoteric, forbidden knowledge, which can be poisonous. And the only way that you can digest that knowledge is through higher awareness, which would be Shiva. So that's why Shiva is called Nilakant, which means blue throat, because he has the poison in his throat. So how does he purify it? With speaking the truth, speaking the deep esoteric knowledge of understanding. That's how he purifies the poison. All right. So let's continue here. So repeating myself, in Teutonic myth, Thunor attempts to kill Jormungandr but is not successful. The planet Earth needs Jormungandr to surround her, otherwise she would be destroyed. Without the instincts of our reptilian brain, we also would not survive. But if there is no evolved human brain in control of this serpent power, then we do not evolve beyond our base reptilian survival instincts. Ignorant, destructive people, thyrses, merely operate from their base instincts of self-preservation. They are not capable of understanding or empathizing with others because they are blinded by their fears. I remember reading an internet comment by someone who was ranting about those damn foreigners. He revealed the true source of his anti-immigration sentiments when he said, "I'm tired of dealing with people from other cultures that I don't understand." I appreciated the honesty of his statement, but it revealed that the entire basis of his disapproval of immigration was based on his fear of the unknown. Whatever he did not understand, he did not like. He was afraid. He was operating from his reptilian brain. He was a slave to his instinct of fight or flight. He was incapable of the evolved thinking of Manuj that enables us to move beyond limiting patterns of thought. He was a thirst, at least in terms of his attitude towards immigration. Thyrses wait because they are lazy and predatory, but also because they are full of fear. That is why they wait in the shadows of our mind. That is why Thunor is constantly doing battle with them on our behalf. All right, next chapter. Valkyries. Valkyries yearn. Valkyries are the female servants of Woden who search the battlefield for slain warriors. The handmaids of Woden scoop up the souls of the fallen heroes and escort them to Valhalla, the Hall of Heroes. The Teutonic concept of dying in battle has been misunderstood for centuries. Dying in battle is a metaphor for living life without fear. It is absolutely possible to die in a violent death and not reach the Hall of the Chosen. It is not about violence. A warrior of Valhalla symbolizes a human who has lived their life without succumbing to their own fear. As a martial artist, I can attest that some of the most brave fighters are also the most frightened children when it comes to their own emotions. So living fearlessly means to do battle with one's own personal demons. The residents of Valhalla are those who have overcome their personal limitations and therefore need not be reborn in human flesh. Woden, as the master of conscious awareness, seeks the fearless warriors who will do battle against the forces of Muspelheim, who seek to destroy the earth through the forces of entropy and decay. Only those spiritual warriors who have faced their inner demons are capable of holding back the forces of decay that will eventually destroy the world. So why do Valkyries yearn? They yearn for human enlightenment. They are filled with a deep longing for humans and their struggle against ignorance. Woden has filled them with a deep desire to end the decay of ignorance and narcissism, so they fly over the battlefield Earth, seeking those souls who have unflinchingly faced down their own internal foes. Valkyries can also aid humans while on Earth. Many of the names of Valkyries embody war, such as battle, axe age, sword time, fight, strength, power. But there are also Valkyries whose name embody peace. Peace, mercy, shield, truce, silence, truce council. When our earthly existence is challenging, when we want to succumb to desperation or fear, Valkyries are very real spiritual beings who will, when called upon, give strength, motivation, and power. They can help us to pick up our shields, unsheath our swords of the Spirit, and give us power to continue to fearlessly fight for our own evolution. And now to the chapter called Mounting Sleipnir. Sleipnir, or Slipper, is one of the names of Woden's trusty steed. Sleipnir or Slipper is one of the names of Woden's trusty steed upon whom the supreme celestial shaman rides. Sleipnir, the magical eight-legged horse given to Woden by the god Loki, gets his name because he is able to slip through the cracks between the 9 worlds. Another name for Woden's horse is Yggdrassil, or Ygg's horse, the mount of the fierce one. Ygg, fierce, plus Drasil, which means horse. Ygg is another name for Woden. The Old Norse word Ygg, if you don't know what it looks like this. The Old Norse word Ygg is cognate with the English word ugly, which originally meant frightening as opposed to merely meaning unattractive. Ugly is Ygg plus the adverbial ly, which we now write as ugly. And ly, you're doing something happily, speedily, ly. Ly was originally liche, which is actually the word like. So if you listen to hillbillies, they say things, they use like instead of ly when they're making an adverb. And it sounds like it's bad grammar, like they're really uneducated. Bring that on over here, quick lack. Bring it over here quickly, quick lack. So if they were to say quick like, they're actually speaking Old English, because liche is where the word like comes from. So the word ugly was actually ug liche, or ug like, or now we don't say like anymore. Come over here quick like. Say come over here quickly. Now it's just ugly. Got it? Ugly is the adverbial of terrifyingly. Terrifyingly. So it means when you call somebody ugly, it's not just a static, that person is unattractive. It means that they, when they walk in the room, they are in the act of terrifying everything that they look at. All right, let's continue. In other words, the ferocity of an ugly person or object created in the onlooker. In other words, the ferocity of an ugly person or object created in the onlooker revulsion out of fear. The antiquated word plain would be an older equivalent of our modern word ugly, meaning unattractive. Woden is fierce not out of mindless rage, but because he is fiercely determined to uncover the mysteries of existence. His single-minded focus appears as frightening rage to the uninitiated onlooker. This Indo-European view of fierce spiritual power is also reflected in the Vedic understanding of the Ugra, or fierce forms of deities associated with the esoteric left-hand path of tantric mysticism. So it's Ugra. You can have Ugra Tara, for instance. That would be, Tara is a Vedic deity, but if you want to deal with the intense side of her, the side of her that destroys negativity, you would work with Ugra Tara. You could work with Ugra Shiva. Just Ugra itself is the same thing as ugly. It's just terrifying or fierce. And then I write in parentheses here, by the way, Tantra has nothing to do with sexual gratification. Tantra means technique, referring to techniques of ritual magic of which sex plays an extremely minor role in a very few isolated practices. For the most part, the vast majority of tantric rituals require complete sexual celibacy and abstention from all sexual activity. Listen, nobody likes sexual pleasure more than me. And so I have nothing against people who want to spiritualize their sexuality and find a way to connect and unite the masculine and the feminine. But I'm here to tell you that when you type in Tantra and teachers of Tantra, it's all nonsense. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It might be good. They might have found ways to use breathing and energy to connect. But in terms of you go to India and there's this tantric sexuality and the teachers, that's all overhyped nonsense. One of the things that has happened here in the West, this is true with anything. It's true with martial arts. It's true with yoga, meditation, just about anything. I mean, somebody on my channel just recently wanted me to look at, I won't mention his name, wanted me to look at some guy who called himself a shaman so-and-so. You should team up with him and you should talk about it. And I went and looked at his channel, and all he was doing was just talking about new age, law of attraction kind of stuff. And I'm trying to figure out what about him makes him a shaman. I mean, he can call himself whatever he wants. I'm okay with that. But what is, he's on television doing something where he's supposedly taking the negative energy out of somebody using spirits, and he's snapping his fingers, and it was just such new age hokey nonsense. And I'm trying to figure out what makes this guy a shaman. Why did I start talking about that? There was a reason for it. I can't remember. Oh well, that's what I get for being so tired. But it reminds me of this. Now I know why. Because, this guy throws on the word shaman because it's popular. I can't see that he has any training in any tradition. Maybe he has some abilities or not, I don't know. But, it's the same kind of thing if you want to go work with a tantric master for some kind of section. I mean, it's all made up. And, what ends up happening is that Westerners went over to the East. In this case, Westerners would go to India to learn yoga. So yoga, by the way, does not mean sitting around stretching. That's not what yoga is. That is hatha yoga. So anytime you see people on the floor stretching and breathing and practicing yoga, whether it's, Bikram yoga or whatever, you put the word, whatever yoga it is, it's all hatha yoga. And they get so wrapped up in doing it exactly right, getting the posture exactly correct. And I've got nothing against that either. I taught Kundalini yoga for years. There's nothing wrong with that, except that they think that's all that there is to it. You just practice these stretching and stretching for all of your life, and you do it perfectly, and you're a yogi. But the way this came about is that Westerners went over to India to learn from masters, and the masters there are called yogis. Yoga, same in English, we have the word yolk, right? So you know what a yolk is? We don't know what it is. It's not the egg yolk. Yolk is, like if you have two oxen, right? And the oxen is pulling, the wagon, right? And there would be a big wooden thing that held them together, so they were both pulling at the same time. So it yoked them together. It unified them. And so yoke means to be unified. So yoga, which is, if you hear lots of Indian guys pronounce it, they won't pronounce it yoga, they will pronounce it yog. Do you practice yoga? Means to unify. So when you want to go learn from a yogi, somebody who has achieved union with the universe, he is a yogi. He teaches you the path of union, the path of yoga. So what is the first thing that you do? Hatha means to balance the male and the female, as well as open up the meridians and all the stuff that yoga is known to do. But that's it. It was preliminary. That's it. It's just getting your body ready. Now go do the rest of it. The same is true with Tantra. Somebody went over to India, and there are sexual techniques. Like if you looked at the body of tantric yoga, which means tantra means to use specific techniques, which is ritual. You chant to a certain deity at a certain time of the day, and you don't eat this. You don't eat meat on that day, and you light this incense, and you say this mantra, and you do it at this time of day for X amount of time, and you can only think about, there's all these rules that you have to do. It's basically magical ritual. So there's all kinds of yoga. There's tantric yoga, which means practicing a technique. There's hatha yoga, which is balancing the two sides of the body and opening the meridians through stretching and breathing. And there's mantra yoga, and then there's bhakti yoga, which means that you take your devotion to the gods. There's karma yoga, which is you go out and you do good deeds. There's all kinds of yoga. So there's all kinds of tantra. And so the nonsense of tantra meaning sexuality means that some idiot Westerner went over to India and heard about some esoteric tantric, sexual practice, which he probably completely didn't understand. And then he came back, or they came back to the West and started saying, I'm a tantric yogi and I'll teach you tantric yoga, and it's just nonsense. And the same is true with the vast majority of martial arts. The reason why you don't see Chinese martial arts in the UFC is because the majority of the Chinese martial arts that have made it over here to the West are the storefront version. Because whenever you go, maybe things have changed now, but back in the day when you went to China, every village had its own form of martial arts. And so they would have the external or the outer court, which is if you were walking by some martial arts studio, you'd see some guys doing some katas or something like that, and that would be that style. But what you're not seeing is the inner door, the people that are practicing inside, away from everybody, that have been invited by the master to come and learn the secret stuff. Because if they showed the secret stuff to other villagers, then those guys would know their tricks and all that. So the really nasty stuff you'd never see. So what ends up coming over to the West, the Shaolin studios that are popping up, it's just the basic stuff that they go, oh yeah, that's yoga. I mean, that's kung fu. That's kung fu. I'll share a story about it. I shared a story from another martial arts friend of mine, and there was this young guy, who wanted to learn kung fu. So he started training in some, kung fu guys, traditional Chinese kung fu yoga studio, and he said, I don't want to learn the basic stuff. I want to learn the secret stuff. I want you to tell me the secret stuff that nobody else learns. And so now it comes to me, I'm going to put him in his place and say, yeah, you're going to learn whatever I think you should learn. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. But, this happens a lot. And so this guy said, oh, I will definitely do that to you. And what he did is he showed him all of the opening salutes for, all the different forms. So an opening salute, like, you see the guys do this kind of thing, that's an opening salute. But some of them can be really elaborate, and they're not necessarily martial forms. They're just these salutes where you're symbolizing, saluting whatever your lineage is or something like that. And there might be some energetic aspect to it, but there might not be any kind of martial application to it. So he taught him a form. He said, I'm going to teach you a secret form. And he taught him all the salutes. And so they went to some competition, and this guy went out to do this secret form. And all he was doing all of these opening salute things or whatever the hell he did. And so the master is sitting there and he's watching this, and some other visiting master that he knew is sitting next to him, and he's going, what the hell is that guy doing? And he says, oh, he wanted to learn something secret and special, so I taught him this very secret, special form. And of course, the guy knew exactly what was happening. This is the kind of stuff that people bring over to the States. They think they know what they're doing. They think they have something of value. They don't. They have the tiniest of surface levels. Anyway, I went off on a tangent, but it drives me crazy. I met this was years ago. I dated a girl who was into Tantra, and she wanted to teach me Tantra. And all she did was teach me some breathing and stuff, and she used her energy to siphon my sexual energy, out of me, and, whatever. But it's nothing. It's nothing. It's the real thing. You've got to be willing to do the hard work and be willing to do go through the preliminaries and master the preliminaries, and then my experience, the universe will then take you to whatever the real mastery is. But it starts with you having the humility and the desire to know and do the work, unlike the guy who wanted to go past everybody and learn the top secret stuff right from the beginning. Universe will give you that kind of stuff and make you think you know something, when in reality you're not really doing much of anything. All right, that was a long tangent. Let's get back to the book here. All right, we're talking now about Ygg. The word Ygg is cognate with the Sanskrit word Ugra, which coincidentally is one of the names of the Hindu god Shiva, who is also a god of shamanic ecstasy. Although I believe Shiva and Woden were discovered independently of each other in their respective cultures, it is no less surprising to me that these gods who serve similar functions also share the same name etymologically. As the reader may already know, Yggdrassil is also the name of the mythical world tree upon whose branches hang the 9 worlds that constitute the entire manifested cosmos. Each world is home to different elements and types of supernatural beings. The 9 worlds of Yggdrassil are 9 worlds. So before we get into that, let me see, I have a picture down here somewhere, so let me just pull that up. Looking for the thunder wheel. There it is. Oh, that's not the one I want. I'm going to use the rune wheel instead. Oh, wait, what's that? Oh, we can use that one. Oh, except that has the 5 elements, not the 9 worlds. All right. Let's use the rune wheel. So in the rune wheel, we've got all the runes there, but those 8 directions, those 8 spokes plus the center is also the 9 worlds. So Yggdrassil is the mount of Odin. Odin rides an 8-legged horse. What do you think that 8-legged horse is? The 8 directions. So that means that he has the power to go into all of the 8 directions. If we are counting Midgard as the 9th world, it means he sits in Midgard with humans and straddles the 8 worlds of Yggdrasil, of the world tree. Got that? All right, let's keep going. So the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil are, starting in the northeast, we have Asgard, which is Os Jard, or the God Fortress, Fort of the Celestial Gods. The next one is Giant Home, which is in the east, and that is the home of the primordial forces of nature. Then in the southeast, you have Dwarf Home, which is the home of the powers of creation through life force energy. And then in the south, you have Fire Home, which is home of the fiery forces of the destructive forces of entropy. In the southwest, you have Hell Home, or the home of the underworld. In the west, you have the Wain's Home, or Vanaheim, home of the Venusian gods of fertility and magic who ride the wind. And then in the northwest, you have Elf Home, which is home of the Ascended Masters, or the Shining Ones. And then in the north, you have Mist Home, which is home of the primordial waters of life. And in the center, you have Midgard, or Mid-Yard, which means the middle fortress, or Middle Earth. It's the home of humans and all other 3-dimensional beings, and it is the seat where Odin sits, so that he can go into all of the other 8 worlds. This is why Odin is so important to humans, why he has such a strong connection to humans, and why he is the example to which humans should aspire. Sleipnir's 8 legs are in fact the outlying 8 dimensions that surround the center world of Midgard, Middle Earth, where we humans live. Map of, and then so I've given you already. I've got a very similar picture with all of the worlds placed in the 8 directions. Woden is symbolic of the evolved human mind located in Midgard. When Woden mounts his horse, the 8 outlying worlds, all of the 9 worlds of the world tree, are magically connected to Woden in Midgard, and he is instantly able to shamanically download all of the information from all 9 worlds simultaneously. And then I write in parentheses, this is only a brief introduction into my interpretation of the shamanic practices of the 9 worlds. For those interested in practical instruction in specific shamanic techniques of empowerment of the Germanic world tree, please refer to my first book, The Thunder Wizard Path, and the DVD Thunder Shamanism. I think I have a book now since I've written this called Thunder Shamanism. I've got all kinds of other videos, and you can go to thunderwizard.com, and I have all that stuff there in the first level of subscription, which, by the way, is just an unbelievable value. You're paying $25 a month to have access to, I don't even know how many hundreds or thousands of hours of in-depth teaching into specific shamanic techniques, philosophy, rituals, all that stuff. So go there, go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe. All right. Do I want to go any further? Let me just see if there's any questions. I don't think there are any. No, I don't see any questions. I've only got 4 people on. Where is everybody? It's Friday at, what is it? 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon, or 8 p.m. Are you guys all out partying during all the COVID lockdown? Why aren't you all watching my channel? All right, let's continue. Let's just keep reading them. Indo-European mythology. When I wrote my first book, I had very little exposure to modern neo-heathenism. My experience had come from years of direct experience with numerous different shamanic paths, including Indo-European-based Vedic Hinduism. My experience in other polytheist paths have certainly revealed more than a few differences in approaches to spiritual power, but there is one area in which they are all in agreement. That is in the area of how to interpret sacred mythology. Traditional understanding of the function of myth is different from both the Christian and the neo-heathen definitions of myth. I will explain this a little later. When I wrote that in my first book, I made the error of referring to Norse myths as scriptures. I received more than a few reprimands from neo-heathens who were quick to point out that our Teutonic ancestors had no written scriptures and that the Norse myths were not meant to be taken literally like the Christian Bible. In my naivete, I had been operating from my traditional understanding of Indo-European myth as sacred source material when I referred to Norse myths as scripture. I had been separated from the Christian misunderstanding of the meaning of myth for many years, so it did not occur to me that my reference would be interpreted through a Christianized Western definition. That was my mistake. Had I known that many neo-heathens have a strong reactionary aversion to anything that even remotely resembles Christianity's warped understanding of the function of myth, I would have altered my words to fit the ears of the reader. But my mistake has also given us a good opportunity to help relieve some Westerners of some misconceptions about traditional Indo-European understanding of sacred mythology and how it differs from the literal Abrahamic mythological view. While I completely and wholeheartedly agree with those who object to the dualist literal interpretation of the Bible, it is important to understand that our pre-Christian ancestors were operating from the traditional Indo-European understanding of the function of myth. The Germanic tribes were not isolated in their understanding of orally transmitted lore. They would have believed, as every other animist culture believes, that the gods are real and they have the power to communicate to humans. We must remember that many modern Westerners who choose to follow neo-heathenism are coming directly from a purely modern Western cultural understanding. This understanding is then unconsciously applied to the pre-Christian animist polytheism of our ancestors. The traditional Indo-European understanding of myth is very different from the Abrahamic model that most of us are familiar with. Traditional polytheist mythological interpretation. The traditional understanding of sacred mythology in all polytheist traditions that retain an unbroken history is this. A true myth is a symbolic teaching that is not invented or crafted by humans. It is a holographic method of spiritual teaching, usually received and memorized while in shamanic trance, wherein the gods, ancestors, and ascended masters reveal hidden spiritual truths to humans in mythological stories or verses. These truths can be understood on many levels. For the layman, the mythical stories will stimulate patterns in the unconscious mind that will entertain and inspire. Simultaneously, while the layman is engrossed in the details of the story, the symbols and even the meter and rhythm of the speech will have a powerful effect on the person's energy body. The main purpose of the myth is for the layman to aid in the spiritual and mental evolution of the listener. And now for the shamanic initiate. The myth will contain holographic symbols and clues to the mysteries of nature on the scientific and shamanic levels. The initiate is expected to meditate on the symbolic meanings of all details in the myth. It is understood that there are no arbitrary or meaningless details in the storyline. Everything is a clue that is meant to be thoroughly investigated. It is understood that the first recipients of the mythological lore probably did not understand them any more than the average listener. Over the centuries, it is believed that shamans will decode the esoteric clues hidden within the details of the myth. When the shaman has verified the magical techniques hidden in the myth, she will remember these practices and pass them on to the next generation. After hundreds or even thousands of years, the myths will continue to be relevant and will continue to reveal spiritual truths on multiple levels to all who study them. What about when lore is not mythological? If a story or song is merely entertaining, it is not a myth. It has been written by humans, not the gods. Any myth that is purported to be literal is either being misinterpreted or is simply a human invention. I could write an entire book on the differences between... Okay, what I'm about to say here, I've completely changed my thoughts on, but I'll go ahead and read it because it's in the book. I could write an entire book on the differences between the Gnostic Gospels and the Abrahamic Old Testament and how these two sets of mythologies were never intended to be combined. But I have little interest in that anymore, and it is outside the scope of this book. I will say this. The Christian Gospels are, in fact, the natural evolution of Gnostic, Jewish, Messianic religion, which later became the basis for Christianity. I've talked about this at length. I've since done a ton of research since I wrote this book, and I've come to a very different conclusion. When I was writing this book, I was operating from the same misunderstanding that a lot of people have now, which is they'll talk about how, oh, you don't understand, Christianity is about Gnosticism, and Gnosticism is a true spiritual, but it's got nothing to do with, after it was thwarted by, power-hungry, religious, blah, blah, blah. I was buying into that whole story as well until I did a lot more research into it. And I've since come to a different conclusion, which is that the Messianic Jews were practicing a form of their religion which had a very Gnostic influence. So Gnostic means knowing. And the whole basis of Gnosticism is victim mentality. Sorry, those of you who follow it, you think it's some deep, beautiful, spiritual thing. It is nothing more than victim mentality. It's a victim mentality that was born out of what happens after hundreds and hundreds of years of people who used to be shamanic animists who lived in connection to their immediate resources. Once you've been dominated and controlled and been, you're part of this giant empire, whether it be the Roman Empire or the Babylonian, or I don't care what empire it is. After even the Greeks, after you've been in an empire for a long enough period of time, your focus changes and you're no longer connected to the seasons. You're no longer connected with balance and all that kind of stuff. So the kinds of gods you start worshiping start becoming more anthropomorphic. You start making idols of gods that look like humans standing there like this. Whereas, even the Hindus did this. The anthropomorphic versions of the gods you see now, like Shiva and Tara and Kali and all of those, that happened during the Middle Ages. They were copying what was going on in Europe. But before that time, the only representation of the deity was a yantra, a mandala, a symbol. So if you wanted to have the equivalent of an idol, in a Hindu home or monastery or whatever, you wouldn't have a statue of a being. You would have had this mandala, and the mandala was a design, and the design had within it the ability to capture and transmit like a three-dimensional hologram. It would capture and transmit the essence of the deity. So the deity would be projected out of the mandala. And that's why when you do like tantric yoga, tantric ritual, you'll have a yantra, and then you'll have a mantra that goes with the yantra, because the mantra is the magical sound that goes in and stimulates all of the symbols to act like a projector. And it's as if On top of that, if it's a, like a copper plate with, with a yantra on it, that copper plate becomes this symbol, and the deity will be transmitted on top of that. Now, you may not see that, but you put offerings around it and incense, and you're chanting the mantra. And the more you chant the mantra, because the mantra is the deity, the more that you chant the mantra, then the deity starts to appear. And then that's when you walk in, the power of the deity is all around you. And according to Tacitus, the same is true for the Germanic tribes. They didn't have temples, they didn't have idols. The gods to them were found in nature, either a rock or a tree or a waterfall or the sky, or, that's where the gods were. The gods weren't in temples, they weren't in idols. So, I don't know how I got into that. But anyway, the Gnostics were people who had been living in some kind of empire, in this case the Roman Empire, for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they had adopted a victim mentality. They had become, they had been infected or, hypnotized by what empires do, which empires try to make you into these tiny little cogs in this big giant machine. And when you start to live like that after a while, you start to make this separation between your internal reality and the external toil that you have to go through every day as you go. And we do it now all the time too. This whole COVID thing is very real, because I actually now know somebody. One of my friends has it. So you morons out there saying it doesn't exist, you're lucky you're not standing next to me. I've got a friend of mine. He's going to be fine, I think, but it's very real. So please stop wasting my fucking time with that horseshit. But COVID is a manifestation of our feeling isolated, because what's happened is we have now manifested in our external world having to stay isolated, stuck in ourselves, stuck in our homes. We can't touch anybody, we can't talk to anybody. This is just an expression of what we have been living for thousands of years. It has to come out at some point. And so it has come out in this way. And so Gnosticism is the natural result of feeling that you don't exist, that you are being abused and oppressed because they were, that you have no identity, that you have no worth, that you have no value. And so this physical world became this hell of just monotony and or outright, oppression. And so they created this dualism. The dualism was there was this bad earth with bad people and bad rulers, because they were surrounded by these Romans or whomever who walk around with swords and smacking you around and, taking you prisoner or, turning you into a slave or enslaving you in some way. And so there were these evil archons, which just means overlords. So there were these evil overlords that were, making your life miserable. And so you yearned to connect with something spiritual. And so they create this cosmology where the earth is bad and heaven is good. And there's this demiurge, which, at this point, the Messianic Jews were connecting to Jehovah. Jehovah was no longer what it was. It's now Jehovah was the demiurge. And you had to get to his son, which was the pure truth. And he was beyond, and he had risen to the heavens, and he was above that. So they were creating this religion, which was a Gnostic religion. It was a particular Jewish Messianic version of it, but it was just victim mentality like was going on all over the Roman Empire. So point being is that I don't buy into this whole idea that I did also, there was this true Gnostic Christianity, and then there was this bad Christianity that was, the really powerful overlords, the religious blah. No, that was the logical evolution of the victim mentality. That's all it is. So even normal Christianity is very Gnostic. You have the God and the devil. You have heaven and hell. There's just this dualism. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't feel this way anymore. I don't believe that there's the Gnostic gospels and then the whatever. So you can take all that and throw it away. But back to the book. So now I say, the point is that if one's understanding of myth or scripture is limited to the literal monotheist Christian understanding, it will be difficult to properly understand the pre-Christian Teutonic mythology. When I have compared how the Germanic myths are similar to Vedic myths, many heathens simply respond by saying, the Vedas are different. Well, of course they are. So what? Other than differences in storyline and characters, etc., how are they different, and how are those differences relevant to the nature of mythology and Indo-European polytheism? If what you're telling me is that our pre-Christian ancestors viewed myth as we do today, i.e., intellectually fabricated cultural stories to help explain forces of nature we don't understand, then that means that the pre-Christian Teutonic tribes' understanding of myth was utterly unique in the entire history of human religion. I highly doubt this. I have no doubt that the bulk of Norse myths were transcribed from authentic, orally transmitted, sacred, mythological source material. Having studied various polytheist mythologies, including the Indo-European Vedic myths, and compared them in style and substance to the Teutonic myths, I can confidently assure the reader that our Norse myths are written in traditional Indo-European style. They are not unique in that way. There is no doubt in my mind that our ancestors interpreted their accepted mythologies in the same way as every other traditional polytheist culture has done since the beginning of time. I believe that neo-heathen reconstructionism, at least as an idea, is on the right track, but before we try to reconstruct the path of our ancestors, we have to get our own agendas, assumptions, and misconceptions out of the way. We have to try to mentally go back to a time before the advent of monotheism in Europe. This means a complete re-education in terms of our understanding of myth. This cannot be done from our armchairs or from within the pages of modern academia. It has to be done through hard work and personal experience. This is where shamanic, animist practices can help. So again, you're seeing this book is old. I don't know how old it is, but when I was just starting this path and discovering it and experiencing it, I tried to reach out to others because I was like, wow, I'm the gods are talking to me. This is all real, and I want to talk to others and have this experience of our cultural and spiritual heritage and all that. And when I ran into these neo-heathen idiots, they were so small-minded and such assholes. I was like, what the hell's going on here? So a lot of what you're seeing here is me thinking, at that time I was thinking that this was going to be a constant struggle, that I was constantly going to have to be battling with these neo-heathens who were going to try and correct me and ostracize me and all that kind of stuff. That's not happened, as you know. Now I don't care. I'm doing my own thing. I don't hear from them hardly ever. I think some of them come and watch my channel and appreciate it for what it is and are smart enough to keep their mouth shut if they know they're going to say something that's going to piss me off. But this is where I was at when I was writing this book. So let's see here. How much more book do we? So do I have? No, we can finish it. I'll go ahead and finish it. An Evolving Path. I originally chose the title Mounting Sleipnir because, as I've already stated in the introduction, I had originally planned on creating a practical manual of Teutonic animism. In my first book, The Thunder Wizard Path, I shared how I had discovered the similarities of the spiritual properties located in each of the 8 directions of the 8-spoked medicine wheel, found in multiple cultures around the world, including from within the Norse myths. From that time up until now, my books have been designed to fully equip the modern Western mind to understand how our pre-Christian Indo-European tribal Germanic ancestors viewed the cosmos. I did not feel I could begin teaching specific shamanic techniques in depth until I had relieved myself of many of my feelings and thoughts about what I had discovered. Hopefully, now that I have written the previous books, The Thunder Wizard Path, Awakening Sleipnir, Shamanism for White People, Rune Shamanism, Rune Divination, and now this book, I can finally let go of all those nagging, persistent definitions and just teach. As that turns out, that's really what happened. And then I say, we'll see how that goes. Now, that's exactly how things worked out. I blurted out all this stuff. I barfed it up because it was driving me crazy, and I put it into books. And then I could just relax, and then I just started teaching. And now I don't have to go through all of the, mental wrangling that was going on. It is my hope that now, being armed with an accurate understanding of the tribal Teutonic mindset, we can safely take up the mantle of Woden and mount Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed of awareness, and complete ourselves spiritually, or as the neo-shamans call it, perform our own soul retrieval. My most urgent desire is to teach people practical, authentic methods of shamanism that will give each person a visceral, immediate experience of their ancestors and the gods they worshipped. If you have read my books and or followed my other works, then you are well equipped to begin the actual work of learning methods of shamanic power, and you will be able to do so in ways that honor your ancestors. Honoring the ancestors. Even though we are all descended from the same original tribe of early African humans, there is something to be gained from honoring our own cultural and ethnic ancestors. How this is achieved is something that each person must determine for themselves. Anyone who knows me or has studied with me in any of the disciplines I teach can tell you that I do not have a racist bone in my body. Yet, I have discovered that by honoring my ethnic ancestors, I have awakened something in my own DNA, something that was not awakened in any other cultural path. And yet it would have been impossible to awaken this dormant Teutonic DNA within myself had I not learned from the ascended masters of other cultural traditions who adopted me as their own, even when some of their own physical descendants would not. There is definitely a way to honor one's ancestors without isolating oneself from the rest of the world. For those who feel as I do, that everyone from whatever culture is our relative, yet still feels a strong pull to awaken their own ancestral animist DNA, I invite you to join me on this path, the path I call Teutonic animism. I don't call it that anymore. I don't call it anything, really. I mean, I'm a thunder wizard, which just means that I'm a shaman who brings transformation. That's just a fancy way of, calling a thunder wizard, thunder shaman, whatever word. I don't really care. I do not know how this path will eventually unfold. Now I do. Every time I try to define it, it keeps evolving. I can honestly say that I do not know what will ultimately emerge from this knowledge, but I do know that it works. I do recognize the validity of all paths. I do believe that the right path is the one that works for you, whatever that may be. For anyone, regardless of ethnic background, if you live in the Western world and relate to Western society, I invite you to join me in this endeavor to create a universally applicable yet culturally specific form of authentic Indo-European-based Teutonic animist polytheism, or thunder wizardry. Whatever path you choose to follow, I wish you well. Well, I've exhausted myself for the moment. The veins in my forehead are not bulging out as much. Perhaps I have gotten this tirade out of my system, so I think I will end this book here. Keep your eyes peeled for the next step in this process, which will focus less on theory and place more emphasis directly to teaching practical techniques and methods of spiritual empowerment. At the time of the writing of this book, I just finished an instructional DVD, Thunder Shamanism, which can be used as an introduction to Teutonic animism. Other books in the works are Advanced Rune Shamanism, The Indo-European Medicine Wheel, which ended up becoming Thunder Shamanism, with more books and instructional DVDs to follow. So that's it for now. May the gods of our ancestors bless us on our endless journey of spiritual evolution. And then an old logo for the Thunder Wizard. That was the end of the book. So that's the end of the book. Bye-bye, book. Again, I don't see any questions here, so let's take a look. No, that's it. No questions whatsoever. So I'll do a little bit of business. There's only 3 people watching. Actually, let me refresh this. Maybe there's more than 3 people there. Let's take a look. Nope. A total of 3 whole people watching it. All right, so lockdown.thunderwizard.com. that is going to be coming to an end here fairly soon. I recommend you take advantage of it ASAP because, I'm I'm giving everything away. Giving everything away that I have power to control the price of. All of my videos and courses and all that. So get it while it's still there, because soon I'll go back to normal and you'll have to pay for them each individually. Go to thunderwizard.com if you want to support the channel, and if you want to learn mastery of shamanism and the manifestation mastery course. I go into great detail, thousands of hours of video, I guess hundreds if not thousands of hours of detailed instruction you don't get on this channel. It's a way to support my channel so I can keep doing this. Courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my books and DVDs and other things that can't be found in the lockdown package or the subscription site. And of course, subscribe. And if you want to achieve complete total enlightenment and not have to be reborn again, hit the bell button, because then you'll be notified whenever I upload a video or do a live streaming. And there you go. That's it. No questions. So I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to go relax. I have to go get some incense or something, because last night I was trying to cook something in the microwave and I hit hours instead of minutes, and plastic burned, and the house stinks of burnt plastic, and I don't have to open all the windows. Anyway, it's giving me a headache. All right, that's it for me, guys. I will see you guys later.